Savannah Guthrie's mother, Nancy Guthrie, missing day 41. Tonight, the very latest in the search for Nancy Guthrie, an 84-year-old beloved grandmother. Plus, do we have a motive? Good evening. I'm Nancy Grace. This is Crime Stories. I want to thank you for being with us. Straight out to Dave Mack, Crime Stories investigative reporter. What about
Nancy? We actually have new information to talk about tonight. You know, Sheriff Nanos has not done any press conferences at all, other than from the very beginning. And he has done one-on-one interviews with some of his favorite reporters, networks. And yesterday was no different. Last night, shocking information coming from Sheriff Nanos in Pima County on the NBC Nightly News.
We believe we know why he did this, and we believe that it was targeted, but we're not 100% sure of that. And so it'd be silly to tell people, yeah, don't worry about it. You're not his target. Don't think for a minute that because it happened to the Guthrie family, you're safe. No, keep your wits about you. You know, I think it's come out from day one. I think from day one, we had some strong beliefs about what happened, and those beliefs haven't diminished.
That was from our friends at NBC Nightly News, Sheriff Nanos, avoiding press conferences where he might have to answer questions, but coming out with an idea that, yes, this was a targeted kidnapping. Nancy Guthrie was targeted. But wait a minute. Everybody now is at risk, and not giving us any real information to go on. It's really frightening to think, if you're living in Tucson, Arizona right now, that you might have a kidnapper / maybe even a murderer that is in your midst. Somebody you might be dining next to at a restaurant. Your kids might go to their kids at school, and they're just roaming around town like nothing. So that's where Nanos is coming from. One has to wonder if the recent press investigation into Pima County Sheriff Nanos and his resume, maybe this is a way to get some of that attention away. I don't know. But still, he claims to have a motive, Sheriff Nanos, and claims it was a targeted attack, but nobody is safe.
Now to Brian Fitzgibbons joining us, Director of Operations, USPA Nationwide Security, leading a team of investigators around the world, including extractions from Mexico, finding missing people, former Marine, Iraqi war vet. Brian Fitzgibbons, what about that?
Yeah, so this was another perplexing statement from Sheriff Nanos. And, you know, I always try to separate the signal from the noise when these statements come out. And, you know, this is not the first statement that has been confusing. He's had a number that he's made that he's had to walk back throughout this case. But from what he said publicly, he's indicating that this is not a random act, that this suspect knew what they were after, chose Nancy, and now he's adding a layer to it that the public is not necessarily safe, that this actor may do this again, right? So again, I don't provide or put much credence into everything Sheriff Nanos is saying at this point. But I think what we are learning is that we have to be able to separate signal from noise, right? We know what we know. We have the evidence in this case. We have to believe that Miss Guthrie was targeted due to Savannah's celebrity and a perceived motive of some sort of extortion for money.
You know, in the last days, there have been a number of crazy conspiracy theories and ideas. And the one thing that gets under the skin of actual investigative journalists is that because of the way platforms are arranged, anybody, anywhere can say anything and make it seem credible. So we've got stories about what could have happened to Nancy Guthrie, ranging from the sublime to the ridiculous. But the one thing we've been trying to figure out, motive. You've got a targeted kidnapping, and the only motive in a targeted kidnapping like this would seem to be money. Nanos suggests that They know the motive. He's not telling, suggesting it's a targeted attack, but nobody is safe. So as we move forward, Brian Fitzgibbons, you have seen and heard many of the different things in this case. And I have to wonder if you were on the ground right now in Tucson and Nanos and his investigator came to you and said, Brian, we need your help. What do we do today?
Timeline. As witnesses are interviewed again and new details are uncovered, locations close to where someone was last known to be can suddenly become more significant. That is one reason some analysts have discussed the damaged utility box. The box sits near a path that people in the neighborhood might use when moving around the area, whether walking or driving. If someone had been moving through the neighborhood during the time investigators are trying to reconstruct, that location might have been passed along the way. However, Sheriff Chris Nanos has stated publicly that authorities do not believe the utility box itself is connected to the disappearance. Even so, federal investigators, including those working with the Federal Bureau of Investigation, continue reviewing all information related to the case. Another topic that has kept conversations around the investigation active involves the earliest days after Nancy Guthrie was reported missing. During that time, investigators were working quickly to gather information and secure potential evidence. Reports indicate that individuals approached the front door area of the home in the days following the discovery of evidence there. Among them was a pizza delivery driver who reportedly came to the residence while the investigation was still developing. Situations like that can sometimes raise questions among observers about how early scenes were managed and whether every possible step was taken to protect potential evidence. Law enforcement agencies often have procedures for securing locations during investigations, but each case can present different challenges. Detectives must work quickly to gather information, while also ensuring that important areas remain preserved for forensic examination. For investigators working on the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie, the focus remains on building a clear timeline of events and examining every possible lead. Locations near the home, witness statements, and physical evidence are all part of the larger effort to understand what may have happened. Right now, authorities continue to emphasize that the investigation remains active and ongoing. But the continued discussion about the utility box and the early handling of the scene shows just how closely people are watching this case, and how many questions still remain unanswered. Before we continue into the next part, make sure you subscribe if you want to keep following real investigation updates like this one. And tell me something in the comments. Where are you watching from? It's always fascinating to see how many people from different places are following the story. Because in the next part, we're going to look at why investigators sometimes re-examine early evidence years or even weeks later, and how small details can sometimes become the breakthrough that changes everything. The disappearance of Nancy Guthrie continues to raise questions as investigators review every possible detail connected to the case. Among the topics that has recently drawn attention is a damaged utility box located near her home. While the box itself might seem like an ordinary object in a neighborhood, its location close to the property has led some observers to ask whether anything unusual may have occurred near that area during the time investigators are trying to reconstruct. Sheriff Chris Nanos has stated that authorities do not currently believe the utility box is directly connected to the investigation. Even so, among them was a pizza delivery driver who reportedly came to the residence while the investigation was still developing. Situations like this sometimes lead people following a case to question how scenes were secured and whether every possible step was taken to preserve potential evidence. Law enforcement agencies typically work to secure important locations as quickly as possible, while also responding to new information and leads. In complex investigations, detectives often return to the same places repeatedly, reviewing evidence and comparing it with witness statements to build a clearer timeline of events. For investigators, even the smallest detail can eventually help clarify what happened. That is why areas near the home, witness reports, and physical evidence are all being examined as part of the larger effort to understand the circumstances surrounding Nancy Guthrie's disappearance. Before we continue covering updates in this case, take a moment to support the channel. If you follow true crime investigations and real case developments, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss future updates. And let me know in the comments, where are you watching from? It's always interesting to see how many people from around the world are following the story as investigators continue searching for answers.
Gloves, the sheriff said, were found on the side of the road near Nancy Guthrie's home. The New York Post was there when one glove was recovered. Both gloves are now being tested for DNA and blood after drops of Nancy Guthrie's blood were found on her front porch. Investigators are now asking neighbors within a 2-mile radius and beyond to share home security camera footage from January 1st, a month before the abduction, to February 2nd, the day after she was abducted, seeking images of anything during those weeks out of the ordinary or important to our investigation. One neighbor saying he went through his video looking to see if there was anything suspicious.
We went through my cameras. We didn't find any vehicles moving at that time in front of my house.
Tonight, police are now indicating there was a suspicious vehicle on the street between 9:30 and 11 a.m. on January 31st, the day before Nancy Guthrie was taken. In addition to asking neighbors for videos from the last month, authorities also appearing to look at this specific window of time.
From our friends at Fox News, straight back to Brian Fitzgibbons. Brian, many online sleuths have identified the vehicle as being a Kia Soul. Let's see the mock-up of the Kia Soul. Now, Brian, as you and I have discussed on many occasions, car manufacturers change either ostensibly or subtly the design of a car nearly every year. And that appeals to, those individuals that like to buy a new car every year and always drive a new car. That said, it can be subtle or very obvious. It can be a tilt up in the front lights. It can be a change in the number of tail lights. It can be any number of things, a subtle slope in the front windshield. But the point is, isn't it true, Fitzgibbons, major metropolitan areas, so New York, Chicago, LA, Atlanta, they've got, of course, homicide. They've got robbery. They've got crimes on children. They've got sex crimes. They've got white-collar crimes. They have an entire fleet of people, investigators, that deal with nothing but car theft and recovery. Often busting wide open car theft rings that make millions and millions of dollars a year. Those guys and ladies can look at a car at a distance and tell you, oh yeah, that's a Kia Soul, that's a 2024, and this is how I know it. How do they do it, Fitzgibbons?
Oh, absolutely. And that's from thousands of hours of surveillance on the job that they're finely tuned to identify make, model, and year. And what I will say is, while this video is not necessarily the highest resolution that you would want, a lot of those key identifiers are there. The shape of the windows, the locations of the taillights. They can get a relative height and size of the tires, size of the vehicle in general. So a lot can be deduced from this, and I think that their assumptions will be pretty accurate here.
If you know or think you know anything about the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie, please dial toll-free 800-225-5324. Repeat, 800-225-5324. Or, if you wish to remain anonymous, 520-882-7463. 520-882-7463. There is a $1.2+ million reward for information leading to the whereabouts of Nancy Guthrie. $1.2+ million on the table. There does not have to be an arrest, much less a conviction. I want to thank all of our guests joining us tonight, but A thank you especially to you for being with us as we continue to do our very best to keep the search for Nancy Guthrie alive. Nancy Grace signing off for tonight, but I'll see you tomorrow night. And until then,